It's a Saturday, morning, almost noon, very cold in the city of Buenos Aires. I'm in an area with notable bars. I mention this for the people who follow us from outside of Argentina, an iconic place right in front, very close to the Tortoni Cafe, which is a historic place in Buenos Aires. In fact, we didn't do the interview there because it was full of people. And that's not a minor detail, although we are now in a bar and everyone is in their own world. The interview you are about to see, and the man I have in front of me, whom I am about to introduce, has a story that requires attention. That's also why we chose this place, so that beyond the ambient noise, we can connect with you and experience another abduction story firsthand. I am going to introduce him. He is Marcelo Florentin. He is in front of me and will be on camera the whole time, so you can 2000 see the story he is going to tell us. Marcelo, thank you for coming all the way here.
No, it's a pleasure, a delight for me to be with you, and well, greetings to the entire audience.
You are 55 years old, and the story you are going to tell us happened many years ago, 1995.
1995, around September of 95.
I'm just going to make this introduction. When you wrote to me, you said, Hector, I have a story to tell that has to do with abduction. I want to tell the audience that I have no idea what you're going to tell me because I didn't want to ask you beforehand. So I'd like you, since you're also a producer and understand the timing, to tell me how this story begins in a chronological manner, and if you believed in these ufological phenomena or the UFO phenomenon before what you're about to tell us happened to you.
Yes, I believed. I'll tell you the truth, I believed. This happened to me by chance. Later, when you see the end or hear the end, you'll realize that I wasn't the only one that day. But well, I believed because back in 1978, I'm 55 years old, I had already seen UFOs both here in Buenos Aires and in Corrientes when we went on vacation with my parents.
What you saw was sightings, let's say. As a kid, you saw lights in the sky. What did you see?
Yes, sightings in 78. I was living in Bernal, here in the province of Buenos Aires, in Quilmes. Well, I saw them. There were 3 objects that we saw at that moment with my parents. And then, well, in the countryside, in the middle of the countryside, in Corrientes, in the valley near Goya, which are mentioned today in Argentina, I also saw in the sky, beyond the satellites, I saw objects. You know, there is a hypothesis that researchers support that when you have a sighting, that is, when you see a ship, you have already been abducted, some say. You just don't remember it.
I want to ask you again if those sightings you had as a child had anything more like a memory loss, or if you were just a witness to lights.
No, at that moment I was just a witness to lights. Later, regarding the abduction story I'm going to tell in Entre Rios, a flying object followed us in a truck.
Well, we want to hear that story, how it was. Tell it with all the details you can.
Well, this was in September of 95. I don't remember the exact date. I know it was a Saturday to Sunday because at that time I worked as a soda vendor. And well, I didn't work on Sundays. We went to bed, we were sleeping in one room, we were just building with who was my wife at that time, with 3 children. Well, we slept in one room, the big bed, a bunk bed, and there we lay down, everyone fell asleep. I always suffered from insomnia as a child. And then I see through the window an immense light, let's say. There was the curtain, everything. And I see an immense light, and at that moment, I don't remember how it was, but I appeared in a very cold shirt, and a woman was taking me. But she wasn't the typical extraterrestrial we see in the movies. Rather, she was like an oriental eyes, dark-skinned, with braids and caps, and she had like a white apron, but behind she had like a jumpsuit without the shape. She was taking me from where I am. I was looking at the walls, everything gray, but a strange gray that lit up as it carried me. I tell you what I remember because it was like that. Until I reached a place where there was a man with the same features. And then I see a light, and I see that they are putting things on me that don't stay. This is how the story began. What I remember is lying in that shirt, with that light. Above to my left, there was a white lump-like, covered with a sheet. This is how it was. I don't know. I estimate 2-3 hours must have passed. Because when I returned to my bed, I wake up. Supposedly I wake up and see 3 little dwarfs like this coming out, but also gray in color, passing between our bed and the bunk bed we had with the kids. At that moment, one believes it is a dream. I woke up around 9 a.m. on a normal Sunday, always used to sleeping, without clothes, let's say in the nude. I wake up and tell him we are sitting there, and I tell the person who was my wife at that time, and do you know what I dreamed? This is easy, literally. I dreamed what I told you, maybe a bit more extended at the moment because I'm summarizing it for you due to time constraints. And my youngest daughter, whose name is Priscilla, who still remembers to this day, asks me, why do you have that there? And here on the arms, here 12 stitches here, behind the legs, behind the knees, the same, and the same on the back of the neck.
When you say points, what do you mean?
Dots, 12 dots, well in line, a little rectangle, but very small.
Can't you show me any, or you don't have it yet?
You were alone at that moment. Let's say it must have lasted 2 hours. Many people sometimes ask me why I didn't take photos in 1995. There were no cell phones like now. You had to have a camera with film. And at that moment, no. It was also a Sunday. Where would I get film?
We might have had the camera, but I don't want to go back. And surely the people watching us will ask for more details. So no, I don't want you to rush either in telling me the experience. I want to go back to your first impression on that ship, because from what you described, it was a laboratory. What can you tell me about the details, the lights, the places, the beings? Beyond what you told me about the features, everything you remember in detail that you can share with us, colors, early smells, temperatures?
No smells. Like I said, if the shirt was very cold. The colors, yes. And there were many Egyptian-like drawings on the walls that no, I couldn't draw them for you because I don't remember anymore. It's been 29 years now. But they were all drawings. I didn't smell any odors. And the features of the person, as I told you, they weren't very tall, nor were they very short. It was, let's say, like a human. Describe them to me as I described them to you, like Orientals. By Orientals, do you mean the features of the eyes? The eyes and the physical form. You see, they have different shoulders. Not to discriminate, I'm just mentioning details. But they didn't speak to me. They spoke to me through telepathy. I heard the voices. This, as I told you, in September of 96, no, 95, sorry, about a year later, September, August, around this time in 96. I see this woman again who doesn't remember her name. She had told me her name telepathically. She appeared but behind a wall. For example, you have a wall. As if she passed through the wall and I saw her again. And she communicated, stay calm, everything is fine, and we will always be with you. That's what she told me at that moment.
What you're telling now happened a year after the abduction itself. This woman appears to you again. Tell me the sequence of where this woman appears to you.
We had already expanded the house. We already had a separate room, and I was lying down. At that moment, I don't remember why I was alone. I think they had gone to a kid's birthday party. I went to bed early because of work, and then, yes, I remember that I fell asleep at first, and suddenly opened my eyes and saw her in front of me, passing through the wall.
In this world, let's say, this is what we need to clarify. The first thing you experienced was within yourself. You were obviously abducted within the dream. They take you to that place. But this second experience is you being awake.
Being awake in my house directly. I wake up in bed. I look and I had it in front of me, passing through a wall that came from outside. It came from outside the house. Today the room faces the house.
And this woman tells you to stay calm, that they are going to accompany you, that they are following you. What was the exact phrase?
That they would always be with me. That's what he told me, right? I stayed calm, knowing that they would always be with me.
Now, Marcelo, after this experience you're telling us about, what changed in your life? What account can you give of feeling this event as a turning point? If it happened, if not, I don't want you to make up. What happened in your life after this? Was there any change?
Yes, there's one more part that I'll tell you about later, which happened around the year 2000, right? Since that moment, I haven't caught a cold or the flu ever again. A cold might last me 1 hour, and I don't know what the flu is. Since that moment, until today, I haven't caught a cold. I don't get sick. That was the big turning point, let's say.
Is there something related to your health? A great immunity, we could say.
Yes, even though I got vaccinated for COVID, I did everything as required, but I never got the flu or a cold again.
Did anything else happen? Did you tell me when?
Well, around 2000, a young man lived around the corner from my house, and he was also moving on a Sunday. I was going to buy the newspaper. Mars tells me, "Where are you going?" Hello? I'm not going to say the name because today he has converted to an evangelical religion and doesn't talk about this topic. He tells me, "Come, we're going to have a beer." I pass by later. I say, "What's going on? What happened?" The kids must have made a mess because they were my little children. Can you imagine that my youngest daughter, who still remembers to this day, she is 33 years old, going to be. So just imagine. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I want to tell you something. You know that in September 95, he tells the same story as I do, but differently. And he tells me, "You were in a shirt covered with a white sheet. I was to your left." It was him, in what I had seen, describing you at one point as the white lump.
I'm going crazy with what you're telling me. I mean, this person who had no knowledge of the story tells you that they experienced the same abduction with you, that you were abducted at the same time.
Exactly. With everything, nothing more than him in the house also saw Lucy through the window when he realized, but he told me it was another MUFON. It was the same one, because I saw two beings. Let's say he saw four. Let's say he saw the two that were studying me, let's say, and the ones that were not studying him.
What happened to you when he told you this?
He tells me I'm crazy. No, forget it, because the same thing happened to me. We tell the same story. What he remembered were the walls, which he recalled when I was telling him about the lights that were turning on and the hieroglyphics that were there.
Yes, it's very interesting because now another window opens, right? It's a double abduction. But it doesn't just remain in your account, in your own experience. There is a third party who confirms it. Because there's an interesting ingredient here, right? That confirms the same story. So we can start to think that indeed this thing about being taken to another place or another dimension, because we also have to leave several hypotheses open, is something that happens, that can happen in a group. Now, how do you process it, or how do you explain it to yourself? Do you feel that you were chosen, or do you feel that you were predisposed for this to happen? That's why I asked you at the beginning if you believed in the Yuuzhan phenomenon.
Look, I don't know if it was chosen. It would be very selfish of me to say that. I think they were studying and just happened to stop on the block of our house. And I don't know if there were more of us. At least I confirmed it with that person, with this guy.
Of course, this guy tells you because you had trust. Because I also understand that this is a very taboo subject that people don't go around saying on the street, "I was abducted."
No, he told me. Yes, we trusted each other, we knew each other from life. He rented around the corner and was just moving. But he said, "Before I move, I've been wanting to tell you this for 5 years." And he had never told me until that day when he was moving. He was finishing the move, and well, at the last table that was left and the chair, he told me the same thing that I had experienced about 5 years ago, let's say, because it was around 2000.
It's also interesting for the people watching us who can leave their comments below this video here on YouTube or by email at trasnocheparanormalmail.com that what you are telling now adds common sense. So, and why do I say this, Marcelo and the people watching us? Because generally when comments appear, there are always people who don't believe in this and immediately discredit it by asking why you didn't take a photo of the marks you had. Or how am I supposed to believe you? Why did it take so long to tell you? And this is where common sense comes in. These things don't happen every day, and you also have to respect the process of the person's White House and Dine in wanting to express it. Because I don't know if it happened to you, that's why I'm asking. Did you ever feel like you were taken for a fool? Have people made fun of you? Did you feel judged? I don't know how many times you've told this story either.
No, I didn't tell it much. But when you tell this story to acquaintances, right away it's nothing. You're lying, you were dreaming, the usual, the typical. But well, as I explained the photos, in 95 there were no cell phones. It was a different time, not like now. People were very different, with a different mindset. So it was much harder for them to believe you. But not always, I told my acquaintances. Only once, as I mentioned to you, off camera in a YouTube program. Did you tell yourself? We are going to name it Anubis, no nervous track, an Airbus track. Yes, the link is posted. He edited it very well, with his own style.
Hey, and what happened with the comments? Did Nervous say anything to you? Did people comment on the video you read?
No, the comments, as I tell you, take a picture. But well, in the year 95, I say again, there was no picture. So, many people believe and many people don't. And then he repeated it on his other show that has coordinate 3. with Matias Oniria and Esteban Dilo, I think it's good. He commented on my story again as it was, because he had other similar stories.
There is a common denominator among all abductions that has to do with the fact that they experiment on us. There are people who say that they put something in our bodies. And there are people who claim to have a chip, a physical chip or an etheric or dimensional chip. And there are others who say no, that on the contrary, they study us, they take samples of our blood, of our biology. What do you think? What did they do to you based on these marks you had on your body?
Honestly, I don't believe it. Because later, due to health problems, I had CT scans and all that. But health-wise, not really. As I told you, I don't catch a cold all the time, just for general checkups that one does. I've had a CT scan. But no, I don't know. I think it's not studied.
And I don't know if it happens to you, or if it happened to you. Now I'm going to go back to the small beings you saw in your room, which I also think is interesting to highlight, but I don't know if it happened to you, or if you wanted to experience something like that again, or wanted to make contact with them. I don't know if at any point you thought that with the power of the mind you could establish communication, if you could call them. How have you managed all these years?
No, I handled it normally. I would be lying if I told you that I didn't want to communicate. I never could. I never could. And how did you do it?
Let's see, tell me about that.
No, I tried. Telepathically, as I told you, but no, that was the last time. The year 96 when she came. This woman, and then never again. Until what happened to my friend, who was also visited again by the other woman who was studying him with the other man. He had the encounter with those two people twice, those two beings, who told him the same thing, to stay calm, that nothing was happening. Look, let me tell you a story. At that time, he weighed 180 kilograms. Today, he doesn't weigh more than 110. What happened? Why did he change so much? Did his form, his thinking change? Well, as I told you, he converted to a Christian religion, and from that moment on, he doesn't talk about it today, but well, that was his turning point.
Just as you told me you haven't gotten sick anymore, he changed his lifestyle?
He changed his lifestyle and, well, he has lost weight, so his hinge. Or something like that, let's say.
Listen, how do you communicate with them? For example, I don't know if this happens to you, but many abductees experience it and others confirm having been visited in this plane. For example, there are people who tell you that extraterrestrial beings are among us, that just as they took you and studied you and told you they would always be close. The phrase, always be close, is not metaphorical but literal. They are always close. And does it happen to you at some point? For example, now we are in a bar in the middle of Buenos Aires. There's a lot of movement. There are many people around us, people passing by on the street. Does it happen to you at some point to look at a particular person and think, hey, could it be? And that you make eye contact with that person as if they were beings camouflaged among humans?
No, that never happened to me. Yes, what I did have a lot in the first 2 or 3 years were dreams of knowing what was going to happen. So, you dreamed something that later happened. Exactly. For example, once I dreamed that they had planted a bomb. I tell you what I dreamed on radio, Splendid, which existed at that time. And well, now I wake up, we turn on. The news at that moment with, as I said, who was it? My wife, who I've been separated from for years now. And boom, they had planted a bomb. I don't remember if it was Radio Rivadavia or which radio station, but it wasn't the same one I had dreamed about.
But that is to say, the concept was a bomb on a radio.
Yes, exactly. Then I once dreamed of Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, that they were on a train and that a train crashes. I wake up there, a train had crashed in Cuba. I don't know what the others had to do with it, but well, they were there. The dream, the context was the train crash.
I return to the small beings around your room, to your abduction. Once you return to wakefulness or wake up, do you see these beings? Tell me again about those small beings. Where were they?
They would be 1.20 meters at most. And no, they ran out and went through the wall. All 3 of them went through the wall, but those were in your room. Those were the ones who brought me. I don't know how it happened, because when I open my eyes like this, suddenly I see it above me in the darkness, because I see them as gray. That these beings later on, yes, my daughter sees them again from the window on the street. And then at the back of the house where she used to play, she sees them again and came running around 7 p.m. in winter
Would it give the impression that these gray beings, because as I described them, they are the small grays with big heads, would it give the impression to see what people think? And I'm going to ask you too, 2009, that they are a kind of, no, I won't use the word slaves, but that they are a kind of employees who do the dirty work. Not the ones who come to get us, the ones who come to bring us back. They are not the ones who have the power, rather they are a kind of. I'll use another word that we all know, like employees, like people who follow orders and do not have the decision-making power. Not that the other beings, as you describe them, more stylized, oriental, are the true beings that have power. Do you agree with this hypothesis? Do you think so? Does it resonate with you? Look, I don't know. No, like pawns, I couldn't find the word. I see them as pawns.
Yes, it's possible. I never heard their voices, nothing. At least those three ran away, as I told you. They didn't say anything. Didn't you see them as big-headed as you say? But how were they? They were like creatures. Let's say a creature of 5 or 6 years old, but shaved. You couldn't distinguish gender, nothing. Yes, they were grey, nothing more. And then my daughter saw them. She described them at that moment. She must have been 8 years old. As silver. But no, she never heard a voice. Imagine a child. She got scared. Oh, how old was your daughter when she saw them? And those from the 90s, so she was 5 years old. At the time she went. To this day, she remembers the spots. And then she saw them again when she was about 8 years old. She saw them through the window and encountered them while playing.
Has your daughter never told you about experiencing something like an abduction?
No, none of my 3 children, none. The oldest, the middle one, or the youngest? No, only. The youngest, whose name is Priscilla, was the one who noticed the points and encountered these beings. Marcelo, did these extraterrestrial beings at any point ask you not to speak? No, not that I remember. Look, in fact, I remember that at that time. Fabio Serpa had a place in Quilmes on Olivaria Street. The only thing is, the 4 times I went to look for him to tell him, I didn't find him. The place was closed, and it seemed incredible, but no, I could never. I could never see Fabio or the people who were there. I arrived just as they left. Never the 4 or 5 times I went, I could never find him.
Do you feel that after the COVID pandemic, there was a wave of sightings, of abduction testimonies, as if these beings had made a decision, of, okay, it's time to make ourselves visible. Now let's go out and show ourselves to appear. The US government has many classified files, some of which they declassified, and last year they used a very powerful phrase like, we have in our possession non-human biological remains, implying that they have the corpse or some corpses of extraterrestrials. Do you feel that after the pandemic there has been an explosion of the phenomenon?
I believe that after the pandemic it became more visible, that they were always around here, and I think the USA has had it for years since the Roswell incident. In fact, they are also talking about intergalactic beings or a kind of flying cigar that comes from another galaxy, and they are not. Surprised by that, the route it takes, which is abnormal, I don't remember what it's called. It has a name, but I can't recall. But I think they became visible. I think they've been here for years. I believe before us, that I'm sure of.
Do you also think, like many people, that extraterrestrial beings intervened in our evolution in some way and have been assisting humanity at different moments in history?
I can't do that. I don't know. One might guess or have an idea that yes, with the topic of the Egyptian pyramids, ancient constructions, it could be, but well, I don't know that. They never told me. I remember they did that study on me. They didn't tell me anything else.
I have you right here in front of me. I want to tell the people. And while you see Marcelo on camera, I am right in front of him. I decided to stay off camera because he is the protagonist, but every time he speaks, I'm looking him in the eyes. I have him in front of me and I want to share my feeling. I believe you. I think that I don't know if it adds up or not. You know how sometimes you're talking to someone and you believe them or you don't. I feel certain about what you're telling me. But I want to ask you, since I have you here and there will be comments of all kinds, people who will believe you and people who won't. Can I ask you some questions for the haters?
Yes, as many as you want.
Or to calm them down?
Whichever you want, there's no problem.
What do you think about those people who are going to say that you are crazy, that you are an unbalanced person, and that you are making this up because it's all in your head?
I've experienced that ever since I told it the first time. There's no mystery that they treat me like I'm crazy. They won't tell you much either. But well, I'm a social psychologist, audiovisual producer, and teacher, so you don't have a life. You're not a guy who is secluded in his house and has no social connections.
You have an ordinary life with a lot of activity, meaning you interact with people all the time.
Yes, as I told you, as an audiovisual producer and an adult education teacher for the Fines Plan in the province. I see 200 people a day, and at the same time I always did social activism. I worked in community centers, so that's not a problem. And every time I tell it, they treat you like you're crazy, but that's normal.
And what about those who think you made this up? Did you sit down one day, since you're a producer, write a script and say, well, I'm going to go out and tell this story to see if I can become famous?
Because that's the other thing they're going to say. No, because if he had done it, it would have been in the year 95. I started later, much later in audiovisual production. So no. But well, as I told you, I have this witness, this man who is my age, just 1 year older. My daughter, who is the one that still remembers to this day. The other day, it was one of my granddaughter's birthdays, because I have 7 grandchildren, around this age, and my nephews. Also talked about it because there, on the land where we are, more of this happened, many things. So there are several situations involving UFOs or paranormal events that have happened on the same property. I live in the front, in the middle. Today my son is there, but at that time my father lived there. And at the back lives my sister with my niece. I don't know if you want to, but can you tell me something about what happened, something paranormal? Look, first let me tell you. This also happened in 94 when my old man, well, he got terminal cancer. At the end of 94, since I was building the house where the abduction later took place, I slept in the room that belonged to my parents, while they used another one. And there, I fought with death every night.
Were you fighting with death all night?
Yes, death, being black with a hood, but it beat the crap out of me, I can say it like that, and nobody believed me.
It happened. Right, sorry to interrupt you because you reminded me of Sergio Dennis. When he was clinically dead, he had a vision that had to do with his own death. After he fell in the theater and ended up dying, and he says, I was fighting with death. I'm going to insert this in the interview because he said the same phrase as you. I was cursing at death, said Sergio.
I was getting into fights. Well, my godfather and my cousin from Corrientes, from the province of Corrientes, just came to visit. We had just finished the room, and they stayed over. Oh, sorry, in the house, in the same room, the same thing happened. And my nephew Ivan, but we still remembered. The same thing happened to him in that thing, in that room, in that house. But well, after, trying to make sense of it, because one tries to find the rational explanation, let's say, it happened that my old man died in February, and after that, nothing ever happened again.
So can we believe that death as an entity comes to find you?
I guess so. 2009, because that was it. It was the place where my old man ended up. Yes, his days ended there, even though he was later hospitalized. But he was always in those rooms. So he had his place, just that he didn't have the person.
I'll give you the last hypothesis of the haters. Here I am too. In the middle, Marcelo. They are going to say that he is someone to whom I first want to say that I did not pay Marcelo. Nothing. He is doing this out of goodwill. I am just going to buy him a coffee. The rest is up to Marcelo. But for those who say that you are an actor, that I hired you, that I gave you a script, told you to come, let's get together, tell me this story that people will believe. I want you to tell people if we knew each other before meeting here.
No, as I told you off camera, Fernanda Caceres, my ex-partner, mentioned to me that you were looking for stories like the ones. She knew. He called me yesterday. I said, yes, I know him, but I'm not watching the show because I sleep at this time. Due to my work issue, let's say. Not issues, but thank God we have work nowadays. And she contacted me with you yesterday and gave me your Instagram. And that's where I wrote to you. Well, you gave me your phone number and we started talking today, everything very quickly.
He wrote to me. I replied right away and we agreed to meet here. And I didn't know you before.
No, I do, because I only see you on TV. But we didn't know each other.
I extend one last invitation to you and want to thank you for giving us your time to share your story. There are many people watching this video. In the audience, you have a bit of everything. You have people who believe in the phenomenon. You have people who are entertained by these stories, who take it as fiction and enjoy listening to it. But I would like you to look at the camera and speak to all the people who are following this. With whatever comes to mind, Tell those who have had a similar experience and still don't dare to talk about it, and to those who don't believe in this, whatever comes from your heart, for the people who are watching.
Yes, well, I think this has happened to many people, but they don't dare to talk about it. Our generation was raised differently, not with the same kind of freedom as those from 2000 onwards. And there are many people who surely won't believe me. That's how it is. It has happened to me when telling it in person. But they should dare to tell. They should dare to tell their story. It's never too late to tell a story.
One last thing, Marcelo, do you want to leave any contact information in case someone is watching and wants to write to you directly and not to me?
You can find me on Instagram as Marcelo Florentin Leon Maros and so on. On Instagram, on Facebook, Marcelo Daniel Florentino. If you write to me, I have no problem.
Thank you, Marcelo, for your time.
No, please, it's a pleasure. Thank you.